right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. And thank you all so much for joining me for this episode. This is going to be an episode all about hypochondria and health anxiety. I know we've done these before, but we haven't talked about it in a while. And I got an audio question from Melody, who messaged me or sent in her audio over at Fearcast Podcast. So I'm going to go over that in just a minute. So I do want to have a shout. Well, actually, before I even get into that, I get so excited to just start getting into it. All right. For those of you who are new to this is a question and answer based podcast about OCD and anxiety. If you have questions about those things, go over to fearcastpodcast.com and send me a question by clicking on the submit a question link there. You can also send in an audio question at fearcastpodcast.com. Click on the link there that says like record your question or something like that. Click that, you'll see it, it's there. Record it right on your desktop, it emails directly to me. It is easy and people are taking advantage of it. Y'all, I've got like 4 weeks of back-to-back questions for this. So I'm going to intersperse some interviews. I've lined up some really fun interviews with people coming up, so I'm excited about that. But send in your questions, y'all. Again, these go to the tippity top of the list. Now, you can go over to Instagram. I am Fearcast Podcast over at Instagram. You can send me a DM, record your question there. That also counts as an audio question. Anyways, get your questions in. I will read them, consider them, hear them, likely put them up on a future episode as I am doing today. So before I get into that, all right, I think this is the first episode I'm recording in November. Now, this is very serious, y'all. This is very serious. Even more serious than the upcoming faith conference, Faith and OCD conference. Much more important than the online OCD conference hosted by none other than OCD SoCal. So shout out to all them. Y'all, it's November. That means Christmas music and holiday music is around the corner. Now, I know some of y'all don't care, and that's fine. Just tune out. But look, I need some suggestions from everybody, okay? Every year, I take this very seriously. I'm trying to find some good music. Sure, the music that was from the 50s is fine. It's fine. But I'm looking for some new stuff. And don't send me Mariah Carey. I'm tired of it. Sick of it, okay? That song needs to die. If I could buy the rights to that song and just squish it down so we never heard that one again, I'd be happy. I know you would be happy too, y'all. We're tired of it. So I need something fun. I need something good. It doesn't have to be upbeat and poppy. It can be pensive and thoughtful. I've got some song recommendations for you that I'll probably share in some future episodes, but I need something good. Send them to me over at Instagram at this episode page. Just DM me over at Fearcast Podcast over at Instagram. I want to hear what your recommendations are. If I get enough, I will make a playlist and I'll share it with y'all. So I think that would be fun. I need your help, everybody, for that. Let's see here. I can't make my recommendation. I don't have my Spotify up. Let's see how fast I can get it up. Because I've made some recommendations in the past. Some John Legend stuff has shown up. Let's see here. It is just going to take its time. But, here we go. It's up. All right. So a song that's been working for me and my family this year or last year was Red and Green by Jonathan McReynolds. Check that one out. I'm forgetting his name. The David Crowder album. That's super fun. It's kind of weird. It goes kind of religious. It goes kind of not. There's a song all about Mrs. Claus and how she's just sick of the man. So it's fun. Anyways, that's what I'm looking for. Fun, mix it up. Oh, let's see here. Now that I have Spotify up, all right, y'all, here's a sad one, and it's real pensive, and you need to be in like maybe a dark place. It kind of puts me in a weird place. I don't know if that's the best, but it puts me in a weird place. It's called Snow by Sleeping at Last. Go check it out. If you become bummed by it, if you become encouraged by it, cool. If you become bummed by it, I'm super sorry. But I love that song, and I'm not going to apologize for anybody at all. So, all right, I need to stop wasting time. All right, let's get into Melody's question. So I'm going to play the audio question because it's an audio question. I'm going to play it, and then we're going to get onto my response.
Hi, my name's Melody. I just found your podcast and it's really fun and I've been really enjoying listening to it. But the reason why I had found it, or how I did, was because my partner has recently been struggling with health OCD or hypochondria. Um, and he has struggled with it a little bit over his lifetime, but recently he got sick with the flu, and it has been very extreme, to the point to where doctors aren't helping. We're about to start therapy, so that'll help him, and he's about to start his medication, but I was just wondering if there was anything that I could be doing better, or just ways that I could properly help him and learn more about it, I guess. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I did just leave another message. I'm leaving another one to be more clear and have more of my concerns or questions addressed. So my partner, struggling with hypochondria, has for most of his life, but recently just got the flu, and this is the first time that I've experienced someone who experiences it so extreme. It's the point where doctors aren't really helping. Therapy has just started and we're starting medication, but it's just consumed his whole life, therefore our whole relationship. I was wondering if there's anything else I could be doing, or any other research I should be looking into. I've also become a safety person, to where he becomes extremely upset when I'm not around, and his anxiety gets a lot worse. So I was wondering how I can still be there for him, but still setting that boundary, or just making sure that he'll be okay without me. Okay, thank you.
All right, Melody, thank you so much for that question. Now, I put both up. I'm not going to edit them. Just going to kind of show, just have all the question. All right. So I love this question, Melody. And I really appreciate you asking this question. I think you are asking the right questions, girl. You're asking the right questions. And this is what this podcast is about. It is not just for individuals who have anxiety or OCD or some diagnosis along the OC spectrum or the anxiety spectrum. It is for loved ones too, and trying to figure out what they can do to help. So I'll try to do the best that I can in answering this, and kind of giving you some stuff to think about along the way. So you mentioned first. Well, the first thing that I want to mention is you mentioned that like the doctors aren't helping, and I'm curious about like what that means. Does that mean the mental health doctors? Does that mean the physical health doctors? I'm going to assume that it's the physical health doctors aren't helping. Now, you didn't give me any details as to what that actually means. You said he has the flu. I believe it was he got the flu, but it was like an extreme kind of flu. So I don't know exactly what's going on. I'll also say, I should have said this at the front. This is what a compassionate person would have said. I hope he's okay. I hope everything is going all right, and I hope he is getting the medical help, the physical help that he needs. But granted that you said he has a history of health anxiety, I also hope he is getting the mental health care and the mental health aspects addressed as well. So, but again, you're asking great questions for this. So let's start getting into this. All right, the first things first. So with health anxiety, trying to get as much information as you can about how health anxiety, hypochondria, health OCD, medical OCD, whatever you want to call it, I don't really care. But getting as much information as possible can be really helpful to understand what your boyfriend is going through and what he's struggling with, right? Because he's kind of dealing with two things. I'm assuming he's dealing with two things, and I'm going to address it as if he is. So on one hand, there's a genuine medical health issue going on, or at least there was, right? Now, that may be something that is something that does need to be addressed through medical means, and there are safe and reasonable ways to deal with that, and there are obsessive ways to deal with that, and that is the other side of things, right? There's also a mental health anxiety disorder issue at play here, right? Now, these two, with health anxiety, these two get intertwined in a very weird, very frustrating way, because it justifies itself, right? The health anxiety, it is reasonable for us as humans to want to take care of our health, and it's one of those things that we all worry about to a certain degree. But it can become something that is overblown, something that takes up too much time. This is where I talk about anxiety and OCD being, or anxiety disorders being normal, reasonable stuff that we all deal with. Anxiety is a normal, good thing that we should have. But when it's a disorder, is because it is happening way too much. It is out of order. So he may be concerned about things that are reasonable, that a reasonable person would be concerned with, but he may be having it or having too much anxiety, the emotional aspect of anxiety. He may be having the thought and the question about his health more than the average bear, and he may be responding to it with behaviors that are unnecessary and excessive and above and beyond what the average person would do, right? So this is what makes it an anxiety disorder, right? If it was general health stuff, it may fall in the lines of health, or of generalized anxiety, or health anxiety, whatever you want. But if it's expanding well beyond that, this is where we get into this problem. All right. So he's going to be in this place where, all right, so what can we do with this? All right. If it's the flu and for whatever else other medical issue that someone is dealing with, in the process of working with somebody with health anxiety, I think it's really important to address both. And Melody, I think this is helpful for you, is educating yourself on both health anxiety and the health issue itself. Now, the health issue itself can be really helpful because if it's the flu, well, is it a particular kind of flu? How does it affect him differently? Are there pre-existing conditions that would lead to his body responding to it in a way that is above and beyond or different or more severe than the average bear? That would be a question. But let's say it's other health issues. Knowing what health issues you're struggling with can be helpful both so you have an idea about how to deal with it and what the treatment for it will look like, but also knowing how it affects you, how it affects the average person, the way it progresses, what treatment, how effective treatment is going to be, what you can expect along the way. And that can help to, it can make things bad, but it can also help you to kind of challenge and bring in some reason and rational thought when the anxiety is trying to spin and take your boyfriend's brain into crazy land. Instead, you can help ground him in the reality of what the disease is, what the illness is, what the prognosis is, all of that. So that's one aspect, and that I'm going to incorporate that for like let's say there was a diagnosis of cancer. Understanding how cancer works, how that particular cancer works, what the prognosis is, what the treatments for it look like, what the symptoms are, what the symptoms are not. All of this is helpful. So that's one aspect of things, and that can also be incorporated into exposures, but that would be down the line and for his therapist to talk about. And we're going to get into that part of it. So the other parts about this is for you, and I think this is what you're doing, and this is why you messaged me, is educating yourself into the anxiety aspects of this. So and again, you're doing the right things because knowing how anxiety works is going to be able to help you support him emotionally in the best possible ways, and also to be able to develop the right kind of boundaries for you and him, not only for you and him together, you and him individually, and helping him and yourself not get caught up in this, I'm going to say it, this weird threesome with anxiety, okay? Because anxiety is trying to weasel its way into this relationship and mess things up, as you mentioned, through you being his safe person and his anxiety getting higher, and so therefore you're this person for him, but we'll talk more about that. Okay. So you probably have learned a little bit about this already from listening to episodes, but something I'll just outline the anxiety cycle really fast, just so you kind of know what this looks like and why we do the treatment that we do for health anxiety. So the anxiety cycle, OCD cycle, however you want to call it, kind of looks like this. Is there going to be internal and external triggers? So it might be physical health things, right? He's got a cough, he's got glands swollen, he's got a fever. Those can all be, internal. I suppose those can also be, those are all internal triggers. Or there can be external triggers, hearing things about his health issues, seeing the doctors, etc. Triggering this obsessive thought, this obsessive question, or this obsessive doubt. What if blank? Or if blank, then blank, right? If I have the flu and they're not treating me well, then it might develop into something worse and I might get more sick, or I might die. If I'm sick and if I don't take these precautions, well, I might get other people sick, and that would be awful for me and awful for them. And what kind of person would make other people sick, right? What if they didn't do the right tests and I'm being treated for something that's wrong, and I'm not being treated for the right thing, right? What if they do all the tests, but they miss something? What if the doctors make a mistake? Like I can go on and on, but it's this question, this doubt, and this worry that causes anxiety, right? So you have this obsessive worry over here, this anxiety here. Now, the compulsion is something that we do to try to eliminate this feared story, the what if or if then story. Now, sometimes you can do that, or sometimes the belief is if I do this, I can, if I ask the doctor, go to the right doctor, go to enough doctors, go to just the best doctors, or get the right kind of tests, then I'll ensure that they'll destroy or they'll treat they'll treat the disease correctly, and everything will be okay, right? So that's one aspect of it, right? If I do the right things, then it'll go away. If I figure it out, then I'll feel better. It can also just be, then I'll feel emotionally better, right? If someone says the right things, if I read the right things, think the right things, behave in the right ways, you accommodate in the right ways, it may not take away the illness itself, but at least I feel less anxious or scared or worried or unsettled or uncertain. And that feels good. What that does is it gives relief. It feels good to feel like you have agency over your health, and it feels good when anxiety itself goes away. But it reinforces the cycle itself, because when you take away this pain, your brain goes, okay, well, I felt uncomfortable and now I feel good. So if I feel uncomfortable, I do this action to feel better. But if he is sick, or if he has the flu, or if he's just a human who's going to interact with the world around him, and he has a human brain, I assume he does, these are the questions that might pop into his head, and he's going to get sick again, because we all are, unfortunately. So the idea is that he's sending his brain that if and when he ever has these thoughts, he knows what to do. He does these compulsions, or requires you to do these compulsions, and you're back at the races. So what we try to do with this is to think differently about the disease itself, think differently about his behaviors and his responses to it, right? This is where CBT and cognitive restructuring comes in. We're going to look at the story itself, challenge it, think differently about it, try to understand it from a more rational, reasonable perspective. And if we can, that will likely change what we are willing to do about that, right? Maybe now those compulsions are deemed unnecessary or not as required, or that maybe you can trust that what the doctors have said is true, and that things should take time, whatever it may be. It can be so complicated with every other disease. You get the idea. We're trying to cut off the one thing that we have control over, which is our behaviors. We can't control our thoughts, we can't control our feelings, but we can control what we do, and that is where exposure and response prevention comes in. And for him, I'll talk mainly about response prevention. So some good resources are out there. So, I mean, I'm biased, and you've already hopefully heard some of these episodes, episode 173 on health anxiety and hypochondriasis, episode 175, the first episode I did with Josh Spatelnik and Michael Steer. They are the authors of Health Anxiety, the Complete Guide to Health Anxiety, to Overcoming Health Anxiety. Check it out. This is going to be a great book. It's also very fun to read. But there are a lot of great resources out there. Check out YouTube. There's going to be a bunch of resources up there. The IUCDF is going to have some great resources up there. So avail yourself to those. The other thing I want to encourage you to do is to actually be in therapy with your boyfriend. You said you just started that, or he just started that. Try to get into a couple of sessions and ask all of your questions there. Express your concern, what your desires are, and how to support him, and have everybody try to get on the same page with what your role is going to be, what his role is going to be. I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. But having everybody on the same page and having a place to freely talk about that is going to be really helpful. It means you will also be on the same page with what treatment for him is going to look like, because whatever your therapist, or his therapist, is going to be doing may be different from what I'm going to recommend or what I'm going to suggest. So do what they're doing, not necessarily what I'm doing. If they overlap, great, but be on the same page there. And if things are working, awesome. If things aren't working, that's a different story for another episode. All right. So what else can you do? Again, growing an education about for you and for him, I suppose, but for you, build your knowledge, build your awareness about what triggers your boyfriend's anxiety, right? And what his feared story is, right? Remember we talked about that obsessive cycle. What are the things that trigger him so you can start to anticipate what those things might be so you can kind of be there and be a supportive person for him as you desire and as necessary and as you're willing to do. um, but that you can also know what you are doing or not doing that's triggering him. And that way you can also know what you could do differently, might do differently, if that's something that you two agree to and want to do. Right? So, also knowing what his feared story is can be helpful. This really comes in handy when you're starting to do exposures. But knowing like what is so worrisome about it? Is it that you're going to get sick? Is it that he's going to get other people sick? Is that it's a moral failing on his end if he gets you sick? Is it that he's just worried about death and that's the feared story? Trying to help understand and get to a better place of what about this is making him so worried and is feeding this story or feeding the obsessive cycle can be really helpful for you in then what you choose to say, not to say, etc., to be a supportive person. Again, we're going to talk about that. All right. One of the biggest things that your boyfriend needs to do is to practice response prevention. Okay. So response prevention, that's part of ERP. So exposure and response prevention. Exposure this is one of the main tools that we use to dealing with anxiety disorders. But exposure and response prevention is getting closer and closer to that thing that you're afraid of while resisting anything that would undermine the anxiety, eliminate the feeling of anxiety, in order to help you learn that that feeling isn't dangerous and that uncertainty isn't in and of itself bad. That your boyfriend can overcome his anxiety. He can survive through it, live through it. It is uncomfortable, but it's never going to kill him. And it's unlikely that whatever his worst fear is will happen, right? The worst fear is the worst fear. There's many, many more things that are more likely to happen. That's what we want to be relying on is what's most likely to happen, not what could, that very weird, that very specific, that very improbable could. That's one we want to avoid. All right. Da, 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 da. All right, so different ways that response prevention can show up. So first off, compulsions can show up as reassurance seeking. So he'll have to pull back on that. And that can be going to doctors excessively is going to be unhelpful. Going to doctors a little bit will be helpful. And I'll talk about that. Googling is popular, asking you maybe one of his reassurances. Physical or bodily checking is something that folks with health anxiety do. So it might be checking their glands, repeatedly rubbing their arms or other parts of their body, mentally doing a mental review of what their body feels like to kind of look for or evaluate, does their body feel better or different or worse or better than it did the day before? Do they feel more cancerous or flu-y or pneumonia-y than they did the day before, or whatever it might be? Does it feel more aneurysm-y today? Let me just check. Do I have a headache? How bad is the headache? Is it different? Is it better? Etc. Okay. Rumination about the disease and just kind of how it has impacted him, how it may impact him in the future. Okay. Other ways that compulsions show up. Maybe for some, it's avoiding certain topics of conversation, maybe avoiding certain foods. I don't know if your boyfriend is avoiding certain activities or movies. I wonder if he's avoiding, this could be a kind of any avoidance to just avoid the feeling that comes with that. Sometimes going to the doctor can be uncomfortable, but he might be avoiding that. Who knows? So, lastly, in this is, are there unreasonable accommodations or demands that he's asking of you? So this is an inappropriate accommodation. So when I work with folks with health anxiety, oftentimes family members, well, I'll just say OCD in general, family members, loved ones are sometimes pulled into that OCD and compulsive cycle through accommodation. And that's things that loved ones do to try to help that person who's struggling with their anxiety to manage their life and manage their life despite anxiety and their obsessions. And also just to take the burden off. And it's seemingly a loving thing that people do. But ultimately what that does is it it prevents them from effectively facing their fear and overcoming the fear itself and treating it as if that is a necessary requirement rather than being a support, an encourager, and putting the responsibility back in their corner. Sometimes this can show up as maybe it's a loved one asking you to, or you or anybody else out there, Melody, if this is you, maybe your boyfriend is asking you to wash more or clean more than you would typically do that. Maybe there's ritualistic interrogation. Sometimes there can be, this excessive, again, interrogation of where'd you go, who would you talk to, what do you interact with, what do you touch, what do you buy, just to make sure that they are safe or the other person isn't bringing in some illness or disease to make it worse. And that can then lead into requirements of washing or avoidance or separation or something to that effect. Sometimes I've heard folks making requirements of family members or loved ones to like change their wardrobe, change the cleaning products they use in their house, paint their house differently, get rid of furniture or get rid of appliances. There can be all sorts of things, but it's stuff that someone else is asking of you, not because it's something that the average reasonable person would do, but it's something at the service of their obsession, at the service of their anxiety, and is not generally medically supported or supported by the medical community. All right. So my general rule of thumb when it comes to health anxiety, and you might have heard me talk about this in the past, because we're talking about real health things oftentimes. So we want to go to doctors, right? My rule of thumb is this: if you are experiencing some medical health thing and you've never experienced it before, go to a doctor, have it checked out, do the tests, do the things, ask the questions, etc., and find out what they have to say. If they say it's nothing, you move forward as if it's nothing. If they say it's something and there's a treatment for it, do the something and then move forward with it. Okay? Now, that's basic. But then, if the rumination comes up again, or let's say you treat it and you move on with it, now you feel that thing again. Well, if you feel something, but you've felt it before, okay? If you felt it before and the doctors have said it's nothing, treat it as if it's nothing. If the doctors have said it's something, well, if that something is something that you can do reasonably, something that a doctor would recommend doing, well, do the thing. Again, it's following medical advice. But if if the doctors have said it's nothing and you still feel this thing, give it some time. I usually say give it a week, right? Let that anxiety start to come down. Let maybe the pain go down, right? Sometimes we talk about this like, I give the example of like an elbow thing, right? Some people go, well, my elbow hurts. It might be a heart attack. My elbow hurts. It might be bone cancer, okay? Now, it might be, but if you've checked those out and the doctor said you're healthy, you're fine, there's no bone cancer, there's no nothing. Now, if you then continuously have this, well, maybe wait a week and see if that feeling passes. If it passes, great. Now, let's say the pain is starting to get worse. Well, go see a doctor. Let's say you all of a sudden feel this and it is severely painful, or it is acute, comes on fast and it hits you hard. Go see a doctor. If it comes on and it's limiting your function, limiting your ability to move around, or limiting your ability to eat or drink or sleep significantly, go see a doctor. All right. Now, these are all rules of thumb, and there are going to be caveats to all this, and I give caveats when I'm working with somebody. But that's my general go-to when it comes to health anxiety, and those are some ways that you can kind of think about this with your boyfriend. Has he gone to see a doctor, and is he following through with what they have to say? One of my big takeaways from my interview and reading this book is they do advise a similar sort of mindset. Go see a doctor. If it's a new thing, if it's a significant thing, if it's harming you in some sort of way, go deal with it. But there's usually going to be a time from the start of the obsession to when you can finally see a doctor. And during that time, that's when we need to manage compulsions, manage the thought, manage the feeling. And that's where response prevention is really going to come in. And your support in healthy ways is going to be helpful, right? It's going to be necessary, right? So it's not to say don't go see a doctor. It's schedule with a doctor and then deal with it in appropriate, reasonable ways. Having your boyfriend or encouraging your boyfriend to cut out some of those compulsions that he's doing and be aware of the accommodations that you are doing. Okay, so we're going to keep going with this? All right. So some other things you can do. Um, Talk with your boyfriend about what your responsibility is and what his responsibility is. What I mean is thinking about the role that you want to take as a supporter for him in all of this. Now, there are a couple of different categories for this, and these aren't hard and fast, and I'll probably change this next time. But kind of some of these ideas you can think about is what role does he want you to have in the anxiety aspect of it, and what role are you willing to take? Right? As you've kind of said, he wants you to be his safety person, right? Well, that can come with a lot of requirement, right? But some roles that you could potentially take, there's the aloof and curious, right? So maybe it's, you're kind of standoffish about the anxiety, but periodically you check in. Hey, how's health going on these days? How's your anxiety these days? Right? How's therapy going? Right? So you are asking questions and you're trying to learn more about it, but you're not constantly on him and taking an active role. You're kind of standoffish, right? You could be the alarm clock, right? The alarm clock role is the person who's reminding him, hey, have you done your exposures lately? Right? It doesn't mean that you are walking him through it or that you are on him or that you are pointing out all the ways that you see compulsions happening, but periodically say, hey, have you checked into this lately? Right? That's another way that you can, another kind of level that you could have. You could be the redirector, right? If he's coming to you and asking for reassurances or asking you to accommodate, you can redirect him towards something that he's done in therapy or towards another tool that he can do that may be helpful or that he's tried before that's helpful. Redirect him towards a delay tactic that could be helpful for him. So the redirector is it's you not taking the active role of trying to fix the problem, but it's pointing him in a direction so that he has the agency over himself. Are you taking the role of the cheerleader? The you got this, right? It doesn't mean that again you're an active participant, but you might be along the way and really supporting him, encouraging him, and helping him in the process of dealing with and coming up and over some of those hills of anxiety, the waves of anxiety, and in those hard times. But you're not answering all the questions and being the reassurer. Lastly, are you taking the role and is he wanting you to take the role of the in-home therapist where you are having to challenge his obsessive thoughts? You're having to be the grounding person. You're trying to talk him off a ledge, as it were, right? That role is the role that some people take, and it's exhausting. And usually that's the thing that causes a tremendous rift within the relationship and is just exhausting. So my encouragement to you is going to be have a very explicit conversation with him about what roles he's expecting of you and what roles you're willing to take, right? Generally speaking, his responsibility is to be an active participant in his treatments, both physical health and mental health, and to be your boyfriend, right? To be the person who's going to engage with you on a wide range of topics, right? On how's work, how's school, how's friends, TV shows you guys are watching, movies you guys are watching, current events, your spiritual life, political participation, emotional and physical intimacy, right? Those are all like boyfriend girlfriend stuff. His job is to be a boyfriend and to be an active participant in his therapy. Your job is to be his girlfriend. Be the person who's going to engage with him on all those things: work, school, friends, spiritual life, physical and emotional intimacy, current. You get the idea. All right, all that stuff. And then to take the role that you would like to have. Be the supporter, be the encourager, because you would like him to be that encourager as well in the relationship. But it requires this conversation to talk about what roles he's wanting and he's expecting, and then again, what you're willing to do. Okay, so let me get to then addressing this kind of safety person, right? You said his anxiety is higher when you're not there, and I wonder, is this because of accommodation? Are there things that he's asking you to do, requiring of you, that is helping making his anxiety better, and then you're not there, so his anxiety is higher? Or are you just his kind of magic lucky rabbit's foot, right? Just your presence makes him feel less anxious. So I don't know. But again, it comes down to having an explicit conversation about what is going on with that safety behavior. I was curious, like how does it make you feel that you are his safety person, right? Does that make you concerned about him, right? Or are you a concern? Like this could go both ways. Are you concerned in a negative way? Are you concerned about where that's going? Or are you genuinely a concerned person, right? And you want to be his safety person. You want to be that supportive person in his life. The other end of that is, are you feeling constrained by being his safety person? Does it feel like it's this burden, this requirement on you? Like he's like for some people, and this is where accommodation really comes in. By your not being there, his anxiety is higher. Well, I imagine you're not an absolute monster, Melody, so you don't want to do things to torture him. So we want to do things that are going to be helpful and kind and loving and nice and et cetera, et cetera. But are those things becoming excessive and are they constraining your life? I also realize if you're watching this online, I'm recording this as the times have changed. Times have changed at night, so I'm recording this later in the day. So it's now getting dark. So it's a light that I've never experienced. So hopefully it's not getting super weird. It's probably weird. Y'all don't really care. All right. So the other question is like, how does he want to be supported, and how does he need you to be his safety person, to be around all the time, right? To be fully accessible all the time, like responding through text message immediately, responding with phone calls, engaging in reassurance or conversations about health all the time. That can be exhausting, and maybe that's something that you're not really willing to have. I've had clients where that's the role, like they spend hours every day talking about their health concerns or their general obsessions. And yeah, there's room for that. There's times for that, but it can become exhausting and you're no longer in a relationship. You're now that in-home therapist. And that can create this tremendous rift within the relationship. And that's kind of not something that a lot of people want to have. So this is where, again, I'll go back to this, having a conversation about what boundaries you want to have about the health and what role anxiety is going to play within the dynamic of your relationship. Again, his job is to be taking care of his anxiety. Yes, you want to be a supportive, loving person, but there can be limits to that. And there ought to be limits to that because you aren't just a compulsion machine. You aren't a reassurance machine. You're an autonomous human and a separate person from him. And that you can be supportive, but you're not going to be his reassurance machine. All right. In my notes, I wrote down the price of admission. Sometimes, well, not sometimes, in a relationship, there will be things that we do for our partner that we don't love doing, right? Things that we have to do, taking out the trash, doing dishes, having conversations. For my wife, it's she, because she is married to me, she has to deal with this, but she has to deal with me talking about music gear way too much. She knows way too much about upright basses, electric basses, banjos now. She knows way too much. God help us both. If I get into another instrument, we can't. I don't know if this marriage will last. It's bonkers, but she does it because she's great. So, and she has no foibles or weirdness, so I have nothing to work on, obviously. But what I'm getting at here is there are going to be things that we have to do within the relationship, but there is what the podcaster Dan Savage calls the price of admission within the relationship. Is this a cost? Are you, Melody, willing to have the dynamic within the relationship be this forever? Or is it too high of a cost? And he'll need to know that. And you two will need to have that conversation. Is it becoming so overwhelming that you can't take it anymore? And if it is, something needs to change, or you're going to break up with him probably. At some point, you're going to get so burnt out. Now, I'm not saying you have to break up with him, but this can happen. I've seen this happen with clients, that the person with the obsessions is unwilling to make change and requiring so much of the other person that other person breaks up with them. It's not our favorite thing. I don't want that to happen either, but it's something for your own sanity too. You are not required to be with this man forever if he is an unwilling participant in his own anxiety and is requiring things excessively of you. Now, I put that out there as not a first line of defense. That's why I've mentioned probably conversations and boundaries 1,000 times already in this episode. But having these conversations and knowing that there is an out if this person is unwilling to participate. Okay. All right, let's keep moving on. So also know that you have your own life. Go out with your friends, go to work, have hobbies, and also be a supportive person. But does that mean that you have to go to all of his appointments? Does that mean that you have to monitor his medication? Does that mean you need to be at his beck and call all the time? Or is that a sometimes thing when things get really bad, right? So again, it's what limits are you willing to have in this process? So lastly, I'll talk about this. So there is something called SPACE, which is supportive parenting for anxious childhood emotions. Now, while this is not obviously your boyfriend is not a child, I hope it's not a child. I hope he's not a child. But the framework around this I think is really helpful for if your boyfriend. So this is kind of in extreme circumstances, and you've gone too long without boundaries, and been caught in this just long accommodation trap, and it's now becoming this huge pressure on yourself. Or another listener out there, not Melody, if you've been experiencing this is something you can do. Really take stock in what are all the things that you are doing to accommodate? What are all the things that you're doing that you are no longer willing or wanting to do? And you can work with it. You could work with a therapist on this, should work with a therapist, up to you. But making this list of things that you do that you no longer want to do, and make a list, write it down, and say, here, look, I love you, and these are the things I'm no longer going to do because I love you and because I want you to face your anxiety, because I want you to overcome your fear of whatever it is. I'm no longer going to come in the house and shower immediately. I'm not going to wash my hands after I touch every doorknob in the house, right? I'm not going to throw out these particular pairs of shoes because they are made with, I don't know, vegan leather, which is plastic, vegan leather because they're made with chemicals, right? If you love them, right? Whatever it might be. And it's up to you, but you can say, these are the things I'm not willing to do. And I'm going to start cutting these things out at this time and at this pace. And you hand out letter to them and you say, here's what's happening. You verbalize what's happening, what's going to change, when it's going to change, and how it's going to change, and why you're doing it. And you can have a conversation about it. But what it's doing is it's putting the responsibility in their corner. It is their responsibility to face and to overcome their fears, and to address it, not only the thought, the irrational thoughts around it, but also the compulsive behavior they're doing in regards to that, and whatever exposures that the therapist is going to be asking them to do. So that is a framework, and I'll encourage you to Google that as well. So if there are things that, if you have more questions about that, or kind of how to frame that, or how to structure that, there are some good resources out there. But my encouragement to you is to be a supportive person to the degree that you're willing to do it, right? And to have those limitations and those boundaries as to what you're unwilling to do. And you can say, you know what, my limit is like talking about the flu for an hour a day. Like I can kind of do that, or it's a half an hour, or it's 10 minutes a day. And then we need to talk about something else. But for that 10 minutes, for that 20-hour, whatever it is, I'm here with it. I'm going to be focused on it, and we're going to talk about it. And then I'm going to hit my upper limit, and then we need to talk about something else. And they have to respect that. And if they're not, that's a different conversation, right? A phrase that I talk about a lot of folks, when you start to see the reassurance coming up again and they're asking the same questions of you over and over again. You say, boyfriend, I love you, but this sounds like it's your health anxiety, and I'm not going to answer those anymore. And you don't answer that. They might get frustrated, and they might try to circumvent that with another question. You're going to come back and say, hey, I love you, and this sounds like it's your obsession, and I'm not going to answer that again. So that's where you can also be the redirector. What's something that you've talked about in therapy that could be helpful here? What did your therapist say last time you brought this up, right? Or if you've already answered that question before, because if it's the first time he's ever asked any of these questions, you can answer. But then if he asks again, hey, I've already answered that. What did I answer last time? Right? Putting it back into his corner, helping him to trust himself, trust what he heard, trust what you told him, instead of trusting anxiety that says, we need to ask this again, we need to get the reassurance again, we need to know, we need to hear the words again, and he doesn't. So, all right, Melody, I've talked way too much on this. I hope this was helpful. I hope to anybody else out there who is struggling with a family member or loved one with health anxiety or any other type of obsessions, that this was helpful in thinking about ways that you can converse with them and structure your relationships so that anxiety and OCD doesn't take over your life, but instead you can get your partner back, which is kind of the whole point of all this. So, all right, everybody, until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously.